Christmas. Glad you come.
How about some of that good spaghetti?
We got everything.
Frank Capra's classic tale of George Bailey and Bedford Falls is one of Hollywood's most notorious works and rightly deserves its status as a classic. Capturing mid-20th century Americana with a first-rate cast and solid screenwriting, It's a Wonderful Life's history as a box office flop that later found life on TV after it entered public domain is well documented and the thing of fairy tales. Audiences have responded vigorously to its uplifting message and hopeful tone about the importance of each individual. Recent commentary has focused decidedly on the film as being much darker than popular conceptions would lead one to believe. But as it now celebrates its 75th anniversary, Frank Capra's magnum opus is universally acknowledged as the Christmas movie par excellence. However, as the director himself said, the film is not actually a Christmas movie. Released in 1946 after both director Capra and star James Stewart returned from fighting in World War II, It's a Wonderful Life is better understood as an example of post-war literature. The narrative situates itself around both World War I and World War II, detailing lead character George Bailey's disrupted life on account of events beyond his control.
George saved his brother's life that day, but he caught a bad cold which infected his left ear. Cost him his hearing in that ear.
As a young boy, George dreams of becoming an adventurer in 1919, right as American troops would be coming home from the Great War. The dreams are never to materialize, however, as George must respond to the crises of the world around him.
Quick, your father's had a stroke.
Mary, I'm sorry, I've got to go. Come on, George, let's hurry.
Capra and co-writers Francis Goodrich and Albert Hackett craft a story about a man who is repeatedly thwarted by the mechanizations of an industrial world, but finds it within himself to practice virtue and assert the essence of humanity in a dehumanizing age. Far from the sanguine reputation Capra's works often derisively receive, It's a Wonderful Life stands as an honest, deeply human response to the horrors of war. Audiences in 1946 would attend to William Wyler's explicitly post-war film The Best Years of Our Lives with rapturous praise. But the more astute response to the rupture wrought by the most devastating military conflict in human history is found in Frank Capra's film. It's a Wonderful Life's setting takes place on the first Christmas Eve following the end of hostilities, drawing a character study of its protagonist in relation to the unceasing forces of power beyond comprehension. In flashbacks, we see how George battles with the nefarious Mr. Potter, whose unbridled enterprise reduces Bedford Falls citizens to mere chattel in his land schemes, much like soldiers and civilians in war theaters were mere statistics to commanders and politicians designing campaigns removed from the front.
Are you running a business or a charity war?
George, on the other hand, stands as a proxy for the battlefield officer who engages in the conflict alongside the enlisted man. The building and loan operation is less a financial institution than it is a vessel for George Bailey to show himself fighting for the American dream and protecting it from tyrants. As portrayed by James Stewart, George Bailey is among the most virtuous and heroic characters ever committed to American celluloid. Unlike the mythic heroism of an Atticus Finch, George Bailey is portrayed as a fallen man frustrated by the circumstances history has thrust upon him. The elopement of George's younger brother Harry stirs resentment, disappointment, and selfishness within George as he realizes virtue will demand he forego his own dreams of exploration once again. Not unlike the servicemen of World War II who saw the prime of their life interrupted or ended entirely by armed conflict, George must forsake his own ambitions and aspirations in the service of a greater good. If It's a Wonderful Life were guilty of the superficiality or naivete as some of its critics claim, Capra and Stewart would play these realities with easy resolutions, but these war veterans combined their talents to show the emotional and psychological cost heroism takes upon a person. Despite resilience and virtue, George's efforts cannot prevent Mr. Potter from stealing the money necessary for his survival, and all is lost. In the desperation of this moment, George surrenders to despair, and it is only divine intervention that saves him. Existential doubts and disillusionment plague George Bailey in his hour of crisis, whose turn to prayer is frankly depicted as one wrought by fear and confusion.
Dear Father in heaven, I'm not a praying man, but if you're up there and you can hear me, show me the way. I'm at the end of my rope, right? Show me the way, oh God.
Like a soldier caught in a foxhole, the prayer is offered from a place of helplessness, and it is only the supernatural work of George's guardian angel Clarence that saves him and allows him to once again understand that his life, indeed all life, is in fact wonderful. A modern film would likely adopt a nihilistic or superficial response to these themes, but It's a Wonderful Life uses the lessons its creative talent learned in World War II to develop a different message, the triumph of charity. As the world emerged from World War II in 1946, Capra helmed a film that conveyed the key takeaway from that conflict, showing that the brutality and incomprehensibility of the modern world could not be adequately addressed by a pursuit of justice, but instead by a pursuit of love. The love of George's family and neighbors restore him to his rightful place in the world, wherein George can move from the precipice of despair to the safe harbor of charity. Such a theme is a timeless message that responds to the ravages of war by offering the hope of love overcoming evil.